Welcome back to Old Guy REI. I'm not trying to talk you out of investing in real estate, but I've been thinking about making this video for a while. I was talking with some friends recently. There was a convention, if you will, in Las Vegas where a bunch of real estate investors got together. And over the years, I've been trying to help anyone who's thinking about investing in real estate, rental properties specifically, to work towards financial freedom or time freedom or whatever the goal is. And it always feels like once someone hears what we've been through these first 5 years, going on 6 years now, we do have some properties. It felt like I was scaring them away or chasing them away, but somebody that I was speaking with said, maybe that's not a bad thing. If you scare someone away, maybe they weren't ready to begin with. But as far as our experience goes, my wife and I do have some rental properties, and we're relying on them to help us in retirement, even though she and I are already at retirement age. One thing I wish is that there had been someone to help us prepare properly before we got our first rental. And that would have saved us a lot of years of frustration. And honestly, it would have saved us a lot of money too. And so that's what the video is about. It's not about fear or sales talk or anything like that, but preparation. When my wife and I restarted in 2019, I was 57. We had already lived through the crash. We lost some properties that we tried to purchase back in 2007. And we've gone through bankruptcy. At that time, adjustable rate loans were the wave of the future, I guess. It took us a while, but now that we're back, and I think I came back into it smarter than I was the first time, but there's still a lot of things that we didn't know. A lot of people in the group talk about how the education doesn't really start until you buy your first property, and that is very true. You can prepare all you want on paper, but until you have that first property, you don't really understand what it takes to be a landlord. And the real problem isn't real estate. I think the bigger problem is walking in blind. They just focus on the purchase price, the down payment, rent estimates, and maybe projected cash flow. But very few people stop to think, what happens right after I close. A lot of times something big can break, a furnace, a air conditioning unit, a water heater, or maybe you realize the roof wasn't in as good a shape as you thought. So if you're not prepared for that, it could knock you out of the game right away. We talk a lot about, I talk a lot about the two main things that I think everybody needs to have before they get started. One is having a strong why, the reason why you want to invest in rental properties. What can they do for you? And the second is having substantial reserves, because if you don't and something big does break, you'll be scrambling to find the money somewhere to get it repaired. But there is something else that doesn't get talked about when you start, especially start later in life like we are. It's like there's an urgency because you feel like you're behind, right? Like I mentioned earlier, or maybe I didn't, but I had no savings. When we restarted, I was 57, realized I didn't have any retirement savings. And I probably was thinking I was going to depend on Social Security solely. But when I started looking into those numbers, my future looked really dismal. So we started picking up a few properties, and at first I thought, you buy a few properties and they cash flow, and that can add to your whatever your other income is, if it's just Social Security or maybe a 401k or something like that. But it takes time, and I didn't understand that at first. It was a strong realization that came to me just maybe a month or two ago. And now I realize I'm going to have to be patient and wait a little bit, get the property stabilized and optimized so that they can produce the cash flow that will help us later on. Some of the things that happened to us after we purchased our first few properties, there was a lot of pressure because we thought we had enough reserves, but we ended up burning through those pretty quickly, and that created a lot of pressure. Thankfully, my wife and I have a really strong relationship, so that didn't seem to be affected by the pressure I was feeling around the rentals. We had vacancies, we had large repairs we had to do, we had to fix things that we overlooked during our due diligence process, meaning going through inspections and things. A lot of times the inspections don't catch every little detail, and then they show up, once you're ready to place a tenant or something like that. And one of the first properties that we purchased it as a triplex, and later realized that it wasn't built as a triplex. It was built as a large single-family home that had been divided up into 3 units, each being 2 bedrooms and 1 bath. And so that had a lot of issues. If you look in my video library, in the very beginning, I was documenting each property and the challenges that it brought. So if you have time, I would take a look at that. And again, it's not to scare people away, but it's the truth. And I hope that could help somebody save them time and or money on their journey too. And because once you own a property, it's pretty heavy. It's the real learning starts. Hopefully you have a network of other people that you can rely on, like we found, and people you can ask questions, because there's a lot of people out there who are further along than we are, that have been through a lot more than we have, and there's usually someone that has gone through the same thing you're facing and can tell you how they worked their way through it. And that's super helpful. Even if they can't directly help you get out of it, at least they can let you know that it is something that happens and it is something survivable, and you'll be better for it coming out the other side. Every time you do whatever it is, the first time it's pretty scary. Sometimes you hesitate, sometimes you put it off because it's not your favorite thing to do, or you think you could spend your time better doing something else. But the longer you put off things like that, the more it's going to cost you. So having a good network is really valuable. One of the things that I'm happy that I did just recently, I created a free download with the new investor in mind, things you should think about before you buy your first or your next rental. And I'll put the link to that in the description. It is free. Hopefully you'll have time to download it, take a look at it, and give me your honest feedback. Maybe come back to this video and leave a comment, whether it helped you or not, or if there was areas that you think I could improve on it. I would really appreciate that. And if you are, ready, if you think you're ready to buy your first or your next property, I hope this slows you down enough to ask more questions before you do, and that you don't go in without enough reserves, without a strong why. Because when things get tough, that why is going to carry you through a lot of tough situations. But thanks for watching, and let me know what you think about that rental reality checklist.